Welcome to the Bridge the Gap podcast. Here's your host, Dustin Udke.
Welcome in, everyone, to another episode of Bridge the Gap, and this is a special one. This is the first in a series I'll be doing called Bridge the Gap Innovators, and what we wanted to do with this is bring people on who are innovating in the fantasy space. You know, standard is standard for a reason. That was the only thing until PPR has existed. You know, bets used to have to go through bookies or sports books in Vegas or Atlantic City. Now you have online and apps, and then DFS became a thing, and we're seeing some new innovations, and I wanted to give a space for the people in our community that are innovating. So tonight I brought on someone from the app that I play on a regular basis. I got Will from Fantasy Spin. Will, how's it going tonight?
I'm doing great, Dustin. Just so pumped to chat with you. You're a good friend, and it's always fun to talk ball and talk business with you. But yeah, really excited to talk about Fantasy Spin, what we've built, and kind of where we're going in the future. So thanks for having me on. Really excited to be the first guest in this Innovator series too. That means a lot, and excited to chop it up.
You know, I told you from the get-go, I was like, I had this idea, and I said, I want you have to be the first one. We've been connected for like 2 years now. I play on the app every day. So those who don't know Will, he is the CXO of Fantasy Spin. He's also a board member of the FSGA, so he's out there trying to make things better for this Fantasy Sports Gaming Association community. Kind of make creative things. And I really like, so why don't you give everyone kind of a background on Fantasy Spin? Where did you come from? Like, what's your story getting into fantasy, and why did you make Fantasy Spin?
Yeah, so I'll try to. It's a long story. Obviously, everybody has a long story, but I'll try and do the quick elevator overview, and we can dive in as we go. But I started a company with 3 of my best friends from home. We've been in the same fantasy league together for decades, like since 5th grade, and our company was based around letting fantasy players sync their fantasy football leagues and bet on their matchups. It was called Better Fantasy. We started in August 2020, and that was our premise for our sort of foray into the fantasy industry. We've been playing forever, but like we saw that the game could add a fun element to it, right? Which was betting on your fantasy leagues matchups. And thankfully, we have some tech background, and we were like, yeah, we should just build this A, for ourselves, but B, other people might like it. It helps fantasy leagues engage with, like fantasy league members engage more, and that's what fantasy sports is all about for me. So we built that platform. Dustin, I know you were an early adopter of the Better Fantasy community, which was awesome. So we started Better Fantasy in August of 2020. And we said, we need a way to monetize this once we started getting investors and started like actually becoming a serious business. And the logical step for us was to become a daily fantasy operator, right? We saw the path blazed first by, DraftKings and FanDuel, and then later on by Underdog, Prize Picks. And we said, you know what, this is something that we'd love to be involved in too. And so we quickly built out our DFS operation for Better Fantasy. And then we were approached by Fantasy Spin last year in 2023. Fantasy Spin had been around for some time, and they had an awesome free-to-play game that they wanted to bring to a regulated DFS environment. And they said, you know what, we would love to acquire your company, acquire your technology, which was a little bit of a hard sort of thing for us to what's the right way to put this, Dustin? Like, it's hard to turn the keys over, right, to something that you've built. So we thought long and hard about it, but we knew that the Fantasy Spin team was the right partner for us. We absolutely love the game that they built. We love the team that we work with every day now, and it's been a really awesome past year for us. So what we essentially did was build a DFS platform, and then we sold that technology and those licenses to Fantasy Spin, and we built the Fantasy Spin game into the Better Fantasy app, if that makes sense. Do you think I left anything out there that that's worth mentioning? That's like the 3-minute, hopefully, quick.
No, that is a 3-minute. I think that's good. I mean, you guys dabbled in, right? Obviously, the betting on your fantasy matchups, which we don't do anymore, and you guys had some prop bets, just like a FanDuel and DraftKings. But you guys went on this different route, and you guys had the Better Fantasy, which was it was like me and you in a lineup, and we could select players, and you had to fill out your lineup. And then you guys got bought by Fantasy Spin, which I thought was a great addition. I think you guys were able to take Fantasy Spin and make it better compared to what they had. Like you guys integrated, I think the two meshed really well. So now you guys have this thing. So I'm trying to get my screen share up and going here. If I can figure that out. But let's talk about what is different between Fantasy Spin and say a DraftKings or a FanDuel or Prize Picks.
Yeah. What is different? Well, at the core, Dustin, what's different is how you draft your team, right? So we're still drafting a fantasy lineup. We're still competing against other players in a pool, whether that pool is a 1v1 or whether it's, a pool of 1,000 people with a big jackpot prize. That all carries over from the traditional fantasy sport games that we've been playing for over a decade. But what's unique about Fantasy Spin, we'll get into it in a minute, is how you draft your team. Right.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit difficult to explain without showing it. But essentially what you do is you spin a lineup, right? So we have 8 players. Let's just use football, for example, quarterback, tight end, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, 2 flexes, right? And all of those 8 positions are on the screen. You have 10 spins, and you can use those 10 spins to generate a lineup. And then you can lock certain players in when you have someone you like. So there's a lot of unique strategy that goes into this that you don't get in traditional salary cap games or certainly like pick'em style fantasy contests. This is totally new, and that's what I love so much about it. Is it's fun to spin things, right? Like that's something we can all agree on. But it adds a unique element of strategy to drafting a fantasy lineup that we just haven't seen before, and that's what I'm really most excited about. Like I think the best part about fantasy sports outside of like the community is that there's so many different ways to play, right? Like in terms of how you want to set up your roster, if you want to stack a wide receiver and a quarterback, or if you want to go 0 RB or whatever. And this just adds a totally new twist onto it, right? And so that's what I'm really excited about it. We know there's a huge appetite amongst fantasy players for new and innovative game plays. And I think we deliver that with Fantasy Spin. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, I'm just having some Wi-Fi connective issues on my phone down here. But let's talk a little bit more about Fantasy Spin. So you talked about kind of what's different. What are you guys offering? What sports do you offer? What's on the table? What's coming down the road? What's been new and exciting in Fantasy Spin lately?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally. So we offer the 4 core sports, right? Football, hockey, basketball, baseball, and then we currently offer NCAA football. We're in the process of integrating NCAA basketball, which should be up in a couple of weeks once that season tips off. Really excited for the St. Bonaventure Bonnies this year. And then we're also going to be adding fun new sports that I've recently gotten into, like F1, like cricket. That's coming later down the road. But some of those more like traditional kind of like tier 2 sports, if you want to call it, I don't know a better way to categorize them, but like, the PGA Tour, like sports like that will be coming in the not too distant future. But right now, the core 4, NCAA football, NCAA basketball.
Nice. And so you guys just recently went through like a round of acquiring more customers. It seems like we got more users on the app. What is that process? What's it been like to just start an app, to basically have an idea in your head and then kind of make it come to fruition and then make it grow?
Well, what's it like? It's a lot of hard work, but if you know what to do, it's really just a matter of executing on your idea, right? Thankfully, we have a really awesome development team that makes bringing the app having the app come to life a smooth process. Building an app is no joke. Getting it released onto the app stores is no joke, and especially when you're talking about a regulated environment like paid fantasy, right? So that just adds another layer of complexity to it. But really, at the end of the day, like, what's it like? It's like anything you do with work, right? It's about committing yourself, and it's about relentless pursuit of the best user experience you can provide people with. That's what I strive for. I hope that's what our players feel when they come onto Fantasy and hang out with us, and Fantasy Spin and hang out with us. And that's what you have to strive for. You have to strive for a world-class user experience, world-class product, and that's what really should be your North Star. And then you just kind of work backwards from there.
Yeah. I don't know why my connected is not connecting, because I literally tried it 3 times before I started.
That's all right. I could try too if you want.
Yeah, if you got one you want to share your screen, that'd be.
Let me. I got to pull it up, so we could talk about some other stuff while I'm trying to pull it up. But yeah, I mean, if anybody, like if you're listening to this now and you have an idea for an app and you have some questions about how to get it off the ground, like just hit me up. It's easier than you think. The hardest thing is definitely the capital side of it, right? But if you're fortunate enough to have access to the resources, whether that be through your own pursuits or through investors, there's a blueprint you can follow, and I'm happy to share it with anybody who might be interested.
Yeah, I agree. And so let's talk a little bit about that. So what would that process look like for you guys?
The process of building the app. So starts with the idea, right? So we had this idea of betting on your fantasy leagues matchups. And what we did was we started with an Excel spreadsheet, right? Just to see if like the math worked out, right? If people would kind of take, so we set a spread for each matchup. Like, would people sort of take like both sides at a 50-50 clip? Like there was a lot of sort of manual testing that went into it, Dustin, before we put pen to paper, anything like in terms of like actual app development. So I think it starts there. Like it starts with finding out how you can get your idea in front of potential target customers and seeing if there's any interest in it. And if there's even a spark of an interest, then you pursue it, right? If people are totally just not with it, then maybe you move on to the next thing. But if there's a spark of interest, then you start to uncover that. You start to figure out, okay, what are these folks, truly excited about? What are they coming back for? What do they like? What are they most interested in? And you just kind of keep giving that to them, during the whole development process. Like we're still doing that now. So that's an ongoing thing. But it starts with that sort of manual test. We did it on an Excel spreadsheet. It could be just a focus group. It could be a survey you put out, but that's kind of the first step that you take. Then if you still feel conviction to pursue this after, then you actually go into like the process of building the app. So you either have to code it yourself or you have to hire a team to code it. You can do this on Fiverr. You can do this on like through an agency. But that would be step two, is actually finding somebody to build it. Right. So once you've built the app, and this could be on a website, it doesn't have to be like an app that you publish to the app stores. Right. The first thing that we did was build a web view, which was basically just a web portal to our game. Right. So that's kind of step two, is building your what they call MVP, minimum viable product. So once you have that out the door, then you can actually start to like scale your feedback, right? So if you started doing your manual feedback with this Excel spreadsheet or this focus group or this survey, then you have your MVP to start scaling that out a little bit more and seeing if you can actually build something that people are like super interested in on a larger scale. If you still feel conviction after that, then you jump into the build that will get you to sort of that commercial viability level, if you will, right? So it starts out like on an Excel sheet, then you move to an MVP, then you move to what people see now when they look up Fantasy Spin on the App Store, and that's kind of the 3-step process that I think is entailed to launching something that like the community is ready to adopt. Obviously, there's a lot of nuance into each of those steps, and I'd be happy to talk about any of them. But that's kind of the 3-step process, like super basic early testing, MVP, and then like scalable product.
Yeah. I don't know why this is just not. It says I'm streaming, but it's not showing up on my computer for whatever reason. While we get this technical difficulties figured out, why should someone sign up for Fantasy Spin compared to signing up for Prize Picks or DraftKings?
Yeah, well, I think they should still sign up for those platforms because everybody offers something unique. Well, maybe that's not necessarily true, but there's something in every app for everybody. But I think people should download Fantasy Spin because it's a really good question. Because it's unique, like we have a totally unique gameplay, and all it takes is a minute to see if you like it or not. And if you like it, it's just a great way to play fantasy sports. And beyond that, it's a great way to engage with a new fantasy community, right? Like we have our small little launch team group chat, Dustin, and like, I want to grow that out to make sure that fantasy players always have a home with us, because I think that's important, especially now, not to get on my soapbox too much, but like, we live in a very divided world. And if Fantasy Spin can be a place that people can sort of come together at and enjoy their shared love of fantasy sports and sports in general together, then that would be awesome. If you're somewhat interested in that, I definitely recommend you check us out on the app stores. And if you do, let me know and I'll hook you up with a little welcome bonus as well. So send me a DM on Twitter at Will Tighe FF.
Yep, and so Fantasy Spin and Will's Twitter has been scrolling at the bottom. A link, so my link, if you sign up under my link, which is in the description, I get a little bonus, which is nice. It always helps me out because I've been on a huge losing streak lately.
Well, hold on, you got to tell everybody about the winning streak you're on before, especially when we were doing our pick'em contests. Dustin was absolutely destroying us. It was like getting to a point where we had to think about limiting this guy. It was so bad. He almost drove us to bankruptcy.
Yeah, so when you guys started, you had the pick'em contest, and you guys were running. The great bonus was, if you pick, I think 5 things, it was 100 times your money, and you could bet. I think it was only like $5-10 a day. It wasn't a whole lot you could bet, like max.
It was $20 a day.
$20 a day. So what I would do is I would do 5 pick'ems at $1. So if I won $100, I would do 3 pick'ems, which I think was like 10 times your money at $2, $5, and something like that. I was betting baseball, which I know nothing about. So I'm a football guy. I know a little bit of hockey. I would just go on and go, okay, this looks right. Okay, this guy's projected for 15 outs. He's gotten 16 outs in the past 5 games. Okay, sounds like a good bet. And I hit those 5 ways for $1 3 times, and I was up to like $400 at some point.
Yeah, you did
and then
a lot.
What you guys also have is nice is you guys have a weekly contest, which we haven't talked about. So every time you win a contest, you also get points. Leaderboard points. And then at the end of the week, the leader of the leaderboard gets something every week. So every Sunday night, I believe right now the winner gets $5 in credit. Yep. Second place gets 5,000 coins, which are your in-app coins that you can use to play for contests. And then I think third place gets 1,000 coins, and I think fourth place gets 200 coins, or something like that. So you can actually rack up. So I was racking up money that way too, because at that point I was like, there's only like a handful of people on at the time, so I'm winning these contests.
Yeah.
And I was just getting $10. At that point, it was $10. I can't seem to get my screen sharing to work. Can you get your screen sharing to work, Will?
I might have to run upstairs and grab my USB connector, but I can totally do that. You'll just have to vamp for 60
Let's vamp
seconds.
for a little bit while you go do that.
All right, 1 sec.
So that was Fantasy Spin when it started. So it's funny because I met Will last year at the expo, not this past one, the year before, and I was like, he's like, man, you're crushing it. And he was going, what are you doing? I go, I don't know baseball at all. So I've always said you don't need to know the sport to bet on the sport. I think you can just look at some of the trends and some things that's way, which is what I love about the app now, is that there is baseball, hockey, which I enjoy hockey, obviously football, college football. I'm assuming basketball will start back up. So that's great. So if you guys have questions you're watching, we got a little technical difficulties, jump over to YouTube, jump in the comments. If you have questions about Fantasy Spin, we'd love to answer those for you. We're going to get you guys a demo in a minute here to talk about Fantasy Spin. But what I do think that Will has done really nicely is he has created a community. So like he said, we have a little group for chat with us who are kind of like early adopters, kind of help them push. We throw ideas. We chat. It kind of makes this cool little community. And what I really love about them is they're very receptive to your comments and feedback. Will is very much, hey, I'm here if you have ideas. And a lot of times, like, I throw them ideas and a week later they're implemented. And I think you guys are really good about that end of not just customer service, but like you're very receptive to customer feedback, which I really like.
You talking about us?
Yes.
Oh,
I think that's great.
you.
I was just talking about how you guys are really good about like not only creating a community, but you guys are also like engaged with your users and want to hear their feedback and go, oh, okay, if you like this and this is something we can do, okay, that's an easy fix. We'll get the develop team, and a week later it's done. So
well, look, I think that's essential, dude. Like you have to listen to the people that are in there every day. If you're not, that's just a totally huge mistake. And I think that goes across like anything that anybody's building. It's like whether it's content that you're writing, whether it's an app you're building, no matter what you're doing, you have to get outside perspective and you have to listen to it and be ready to like challenge your preconceived notions on what you thought was a good idea. If somebody thinks it's not a good idea, then maybe it's not a good idea,
And you guys are very good about like, not only just eliciting feedback of like, hey, what do you guys think about this? But what, like, you're just going, hey, what do you guys want? And we go, we want this. And you go, okay, cool, we can do that. And then Like there's things where I'm like, I don't really like this, but maybe I'm just a minority, and you're really good about like, hey, this is why we did this. And I'm like, okay, makes sense.
Mhm.
But I do like that aspect that I feel like I do feel like I am part of the team of developing that where it's like, man, this would make it easier for me to use the app. And you're like, oh, that's a great idea, easy fix. Let's just do it.
Thanks, dude. Yeah, I mean
So,
that's we're big advocates of that. I do have bad news about the USB adapter. So my
mhm.
girlfriend is using it upstairs. She's currently doing data entry. She has a big paper she has to submit tomorrow to like some science journal. So she's using it, and I go upstairs. I run upstairs. I'm like, Alyssa, can I use the USB adapter? She goes, well, I'm using it. I go, what are you using it for? And she goes, well, I'm submitting a paper to a science publication. I go, okay, that's
well,
probably more important.
mine is currently working as we speak.
Oh,
Folks.
nice.
It literally like just decided to work. So
Nice.
here is Fantasy Spin. I wish I could make it bigger for you guys, but we'll see if this actually loads. Which
That's all
it's
right.
wonky on my Wi-Fi, so it might not actually load the app, which has always been an issue for me. I'm in my basement and I'm wired in for my laptop for the whole thing, but getting
Oh,
on
your
any sort of
laptop
app.
is wired in, but your phone isn't.
Yes, exactly. I'm
Gotcha.
not sure how to wire in my phone. I don't know if I could do that, but we'll see if I can actually get the app to load.
You know what you could do as well, Dustin, is you could just go to the App Store. We have a preview video in there that kind of shows how it works too. Worst case, but it's so fun to play. I would love to play it right now.
Yeah. Well, now my screen sharing has just decided to stop. So wonderful. Isn't that just great?
Hey, this is what happens when you're the first guest of the Innovator series. You're gonna work out the kinks,
Work out the kinks.
and that's
And
okay.
I try to test everything ahead of time. Let me do
Dude,
something else
nothing.
here.
Sometimes there's nothing you can do. Sometimes your
Sometimes
Wi-Fi
there's
is
just
just acting up. You know.
yeah. And my son should be in bed, so he shouldn't be on the Wi-Fi, hopefully.
Well, I've been on the Wi-Fi when I was supposed to be in bed before as well.
Well, that is true. Now, I will say I'm going to pull up our YouTube because you guys have been doing really great about
Oh,
putting
thank
out
you.
shorts on YouTube. You've got
Yeah,
Colby. I know I've been on some.
yeah.
Doing some shorts. So let's just
Just part of the growth process, man. You know, just trying to get some content out. I think the really nice thing about the game is that it makes it super easy to produce a show. Like,
yep.
there's no need to come up with some big elaborate like script or run a show or anything like that. As you'll see, the players kind of just present themselves, and you know, me and you could talk about 8 different fantasy players for 8 hours. You know, so the content kind of takes care of itself.
And so this is you guys, you and
Yeah,
let's
so
see here.
that's Dakota Happis. Dakota is the CEO of Fantasy Spin. So
Okay.
Dakota is the one that we partnered up with, and like from the get, just an awesome dude. We knew it right away. Great guy to
So
work
you
with.
guys, this is your first spin, and you
Uh-huh.
guys basically what it does, it spins for you. And I'm going to pause the video here now. It gives you a quarterback, a tight end for football, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 2 flex. And
Yep.
you can see up here how many coins you have. It gives you a rating on your lineup, a number of stars, and then how many locks you have. You can spin again. You can see the contest info, and then you can lock in a lineup. So look at this one. This was week 1. You guys had Josh Allen. So this little coin thing up here, which is now like a foam finger, indicates that they are one of the top players at their position.
Yep.
You get a little hot and cold emoticon there. Dice, injury dice with their injury tells you who they're playing, kind of projected points. And what you guys do here is you can then lock in a lineup based on how you want to do.
Yep.
And so you guys decide. I'm going to guess on this one, you guys probably locked in Josh Allen, Bijan, and Kyron Williams based on how I would do this if I was playing in week 1.
I hope we did.
So you can see here, you guys at that point were winning free coins for getting the top player.
Yep.
You guys are probably talking about who you want to play. So, right, looking at week 1, you might have locked in Javonte. You know, he was ranked 24th, but at that point, the Denver Broncos offense was a little iffy. And you guys probably go through there. I think I can probably speed this up. So you go and you click on a player and it allows you to lock him in. You guys lock in Josh Allen there.
And that's a key component of like the strategy. You have a certain amount of locks, right? So it's like, how do you use those
Yep.
to where you don't burn them too quick, to where it's just an added layer of strategy, man. Like again, like you've experienced it for yourself. It's totally it's totally different. It's so hard to explain. It's like the early days of fantasy. Truly, it's just totally new.
Yeah, and so what I like about it is, so a football lineup, you have 6 locks, and you
Yep.
have 8 players. So basically, you can lock in everyone but 2, and it is that strategy. So compared to like a traditional like DFS, like a Millie Maker on DraftKings or FanDuel, where you're trying to get that outlier, you just don't know who you're going to get. So there is that strategy of, do you lock in a middle tier running back, depending on how many spins? And I know when I've done this with Cody Conway, is like, do we lock in a guy based on, well, we have 7 spins left versus 4 spins left, right? I think that's the strategy, which is what I really like, because I don't like games of luck. I
No.
don't want to bet money on games of luck because I have no control over that, right? It might as well
Mhm.
just be a coin flip. I want
Yep.
games with a little bit of strategy. So here I can go and lock in guys and go, okay, hey, I'm going to lock in Bijan, or I might lock in on this one, go lock in Kyron. He's at this point, he was the 4th ranked running back. And then, but if I get, some other guys, maybe I take them out, or if I get, let's say at that point you got a Cooper Cup and a Puka Nacua, maybe you don't want 2 Rams, and you can actually unlock players as well, which I think is a nice feature that you guys add based on our feedback, I think, of, hey, we want to be able to unlock guys based on how things go. So you guys did that, and you guys looks like you locked in Bijan and Josh Allen, which makes sense. I think you guys probably soon talked about Kyron on the sound plane, but I'm assuming you talked about locking in Kyron possibly. Looks like you guys are going to lock him in.
I sure hope we did.
I would assume you do. Let's see
Yeah.
here.
So this was if you could pause it real quick, Dustin. This was like right after the punt return news came out
Oh,
about
no,
Kyron.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think we actually did debate it for a second. Oh, I don't think we locked him in. That was probably my doing, and I totally fumbled the bag on that one. It's funny.
Yeah, and so what's
I've been telling everyone, trade Kyron away in Dynasty, trade him in redraft, and he just keeps scoring touchdowns.
And so this is the weird. So this is the gamble you play: is you don't lock in Kyron, you respin. Now you still have 9. At that point, you had 9 spins. So you respin, you get Chuba Hubbard and Raheem Mostert. You're going, well, crap, that didn't really work out. You get Keon Coleman. So do you play that stack? That's where I like this kind of strategy. And so with
Mhm.
football, you guys do it with the games you offer for football are standalone games, so Thursday night games. You do just the Thursday night games. You guys do early and late for Sunday morning, so it's early and late games are joined together, so you have a bigger player pool. You
Mhm.
guys do late and Sunday night, and then you do Sunday night alone, and then a Monday night alone. So you can actually play 5 different games on Sunday and basically the NFL week, which I really like. You guys offer a variety. Talk about the variety of different contest entry points that you guys have.
Yeah, totally.
And
So
we'll
like,
play this on the side here.
yeah, so as there's, like you were saying, Dustin, as there's that like Sunday main slate contest, that involves one bit of strategy, right? And then your single game event contests, like it's a totally different strategy, right? Because you're almost trying to like hone in on the 1 or 2 outliers that can like produce in that one game. Like, so if like the Ravens are playing, maybe you're keyed up on Justice Hill, maybe you shouldn't be, but that just brings a new added element of strategy into it. And then on top of that, you have the different contest parameters. Like, so basically the added layer of strategy for the contest parameters is if it's a big, like pool with 1,000 people, that's totally different than a 1v1.
Yeah.
Like it's just a completely different game. So that's a little bit of an indicator on the variety of contests we offer. We offer 1v1s, which range in entry fee amounts and payout amounts. So, like, if you want to just play casually, we have $3 contests available. But then if you wanted to, get a little sweat going, we do have $100 entries for 1v1s. In addition to that, we have the Lucky 13s, which are cool. It's a more of a traditional fantasy league kind of thing where you're playing against 12 other people. $13 entry fee with $135 prize pool, which is cool. So sort of like an in between a main event and a 1v1. And then we're also just, we're continuing to innovate in terms of like the contest structures we offer, right? So I'll ask you, Dustin. I'll ask everybody who's listening if there's a certain contest structure you'd love to see. Like, let us know, and we'll get it up. I think those are the 2 kind of main strategy points: is the size of the pool, and then whether it's like the player pool, right? Whether it's a single game like Sunday Night Football, or whether it's like the main slate contest.
Yeah, I think it's been fun because I enjoy the Lucky 13. So only 13 people can enter. Generally, I think each individual can enter 2 lineups in that,
Hmm.
which is super fun. It allows you to kind of play the odds. I think that now they're guaranteed. So you have to have 10 people in the contest for the contest to actually run. So if only 9 go in, the contest gets void, you get your money back, which I think is a great way of doing like a no risk type of system with that. And then the main slates, you guys have recently upped your prize pools. Talk about that a little bit because you guys have now you went from a $1,000 prize pool, which I think was paying out the top 30 people or 40 people, and now it's gone to 2,000. And what's coming and what's next?
It's only going up, man. Like, so we're always going to have those 1v1 contests, which will stay the same, right? Self-explanatory there. But I mean, yeah, we've been really lucky to have a lot of new folks join the community, and with that, we can offer bigger contests, right? So, uh, 2 weeks ago, we offered our first $1,000 prize pool, which was a big milestone for us as a company and something we were really excited about. And then, yeah, like this week, we're going to have a $2,500 main event prize pool, which is really exciting. So that's just directly attributed to people loving the app and joining us, but also people staying with us, right? That's been a
Yeah.
really awesome thing to see too. Is the folks that are joining, they're staying around, and you're the ultimate testament to that, Dustin. So that's been the key for those big contests coming up. And like where we get to, I mean, we want to offer the biggest contests in the space someday. So that's ultimately where we want to be at.
Yeah, and for people who are out there, and I know when we start talking betting and gambling, people are always talking about, EV and return on investment. I think it's a really great proposition value in terms of number of people that get in versus like your percentage to win. When you're talking a 1 in 13 chance to basically be first in
Mhm.
those lucky 13s. I think in the $1,000 tournament, I think you could enter, or 2000 was like you could enter 15 lineups,
Yep. Yep.
and I think it was
Let me
capped
pull
out
up
at
the actual.
500. I think it was.
Yeah, let me pull up the actual stats real quick. So for um, a contest where you have 100 or more entries, we can't do the lesser of 3% of all entries or 150 entries. So that's why like Underdog has their Best Ball Mania capped at 150 entries, right?
Yeah.
For one person. So once we get to millions of people in our contest, then we'll cap it at 150. But um, as of now, it's just going to continue being like 3% of all entries, more or less.
Which is great. Like, so when I'm looking at a contest, I look at those lucky 13s on a Sunday morning and go, there's 8 people entered. I can be 2 to get it to the guaranteed 10.
Mhm.
I got a 2 in 10 chance of being first, or
Yeah,
maybe first
and
and
then that's
second.
a yeah that's a plus EV play, that's overlay right there. So that those kind of opportunities are on the app also. And if you're a sharp person like Dustin, you'll seek those out, you'll find them, and that's how Dustin makes his hay around here.
Well, it was until recently. Now I'm just stinking it up lately.
Now
I don't
Rachel's
think I've
been cleaning your
wait.
clock.
I don't think I've won a contest in I've won a few, but I haven't won significant contest. I'm down over the past 2 weeks, which I'm
All
still
right.
playing with house money, so I can't complain too much. It's not so level.
Yeah.
But it's nice, and it's nice because I don't do college football. Like I don't really follow college football, but I can definitely go in there and check out things.
Yeah, and
You
that's
know, it,
real quick, Dustin. I think that's one of the really nice things about the game as well, is like it's very approachable for a casual fan. So for me, who doesn't pay attention to baseball as much, I can play and I see those position ranks, and I can kind of like craft a lineup based on that. And with some basic game theory that is applicable to any fantasy sports contest, you can start to think about, okay, which players might be an outlier, which players are hot, and we indicate those kind of things on the app. And so it's
yeah,
definitely more approachable for a casual fan, which is nice because that's what gets you into more sports. Like the reason that I'm into cricket is because I was betting on cricket. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
so if we can give people, look at those two handsome guys, if we can get more people into more sports, that's a great thing.
Yep. So this is a video of Colby and Coop doing I believe it's a week 6 Thursday night lineup. So we'll see what this kind of looks like, where they only have 2 teams, and you can kind of, once we get the spin, you can see their first spin. It's you're only talking Gino and Purdy as a quarterback. So
Yep.
there's some strategy there. Like, if you like both the quarterbacks, do you need to lock them in? And this one, I believe there's kickers in those. So,
Yep.
I never, like for me, I never lock in a QB or a kicker. I just let them go and try to lock in the best basically flex, and these are all flex positions. So with the single games, you don't have the running back, wide receivers, you just have all flex. So that's a game of strategy, and there's some things where
Mhm.
there was one game where it was like Eagles and I think it was Eagles and someone else, and it was like, well, I like both tight ends, and if I got one in my flex spot, I would just lock him in because it guaranteed the other one in my flex spot because it
And
was just only two
yeah,
guys in the middle.
week one before Mark Andrews fell off a cliff, that same thing happened with Mark Andrews and Kelsey.
Yep. Yeah.
That's just
So
another
it's
layer you
fun,
got to
and
think.
I think you're right. Like hockey just started. I'm a big hockey fan, and it's got me
Mhm.
back into hockey a little more because I'm willing to go. Okay, it's first week. I don't really know, but these are the names I know, and these are position ranks, and I don't keep up too much. Like I forgot that Steven Stamkos was not a Lightning player anymore, and he's on the Predators. And I was like, oh, only still Steven Stamkos. Like he's still going to be good, but he hasn't been as good as he was because he's trying to learn a new team. And I think it's just a great way of getting into sports. So I'm excited for cricket, and I mean probably not cricket for me, but F1 and those things. I
You
think
say
people
that
are
now,
more
but
excited.
like it's awesome to watch. It's so electric. It is so electric.
Yeah. So
Maybe not
as
as
we watch,
exciting about F1, but still exciting.
no. So as we watch these guys go to it, what is coming down the road for fantasy spin? I mean, you've said cricket, you've said some of these other kind of tier 2 sports.
Mhm.
Where do you see it going in the next, let's say, this rest of football season? Where do you want it to go, and what do you see coming down the pipe for you guys?
Yeah. Well, honestly, Dustin, like this might sound like a cheesy answer, but where I want it to go is where I see it going, which
Okay.
is honestly
Great.
adding more sports, adding more like contest types, potentially like adding a format where there's only 6 players instead of 8. Maybe there's only 4 players instead of like exploring those
Yep.
things and building them if there's appetite for it. But then also it's boring, but like a lot of accessibility things, a lot of user experience, like ease of life things, like that's something we really pride ourselves on is like
Yeah.
being in the weeds on those details, making sure that fonts are the correct size, making sure they pass accessibility standards. It's boring, it's not sexy, but that's what leads to a world class product experience, and that's what we're going to keep building as well, like as well as the fun stuff.
Yeah, and so I just wanted to highlight here on this Thursday night spin, they only had 3 spins and they only have 4 locks. So with those single games, you get a little less spins, a little less locks to, because there's just not as many variety. So you do have to mind that you can always click on the contest info in the bottom and it'll tell you all the stuff of how
Yeah.
many entries need for it to be guaranteed, what the payout is. You can see what players are available. So sometimes,
Yep.
like the Raiders, who knows what receivers are actually going to be available for them because who
Hmm.
knows who's actually playing for those guys. So if you want, that deep guy, he might not just be like, if you want, I don't even know who like the Raiders starting wide receivers are this week because now they don't have Adams and Jacoby Myers is hurt. It's like Trey Tucker
Dylan
and
Laube is going to be playing wide receiver.
yeah. So like, is he gonna be, so you can kind of play that kind of thing and you can really make a lineup. I've thrown in some lineups and I'm like, this lineup's a banger. Like I do it in the chat. I'm like this. I'm like, you guys are all playing for second. I throw in this like awesome lineup and I come in like 40th. I'm like, how did this lineup not like it's Josh Allen and Derrick Henry and Debo and it's like man they just kind of stunk. So you just never
Yeah.
know. But like that before we finish out, I do want to talk about states you're available in and where is that currently at and where is that headed?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a great question. So states we're in right now, I'll just quickly reference our website and just list them off. We're in 21 states: Oregon, California, Alaska, Utah, New Mexico, Wyoming, South Dakota, North Dakota, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Kentucky, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. So those are the states that we're currently available in. And then we're just looking to continue expanding from there. There's some states that are a little bit like, candidly, each state is different in terms of its like ease of access for a DFS operator to go in there and start operating regulated paid fantasy contests, right? Like certain states have much higher application fees or different things like that. But what we did, which was, a great decision I think that we made, was we went into Massachusetts first. And why that's important is because Massachusetts has very strict regulations in terms of what contests you can enter. Like you have to be 21 or older. So we had to build in a new age like parameter for players on our app for specific to certain states. You can't enter college fantasy contests in Massachusetts, so we had to build that parameter if you're in a certain state that these contests won't show. So we went into Massachusetts because they had the most strict guidelines, which was really great. So now it's honestly going to be a factor, Dustin, like candidly again, of what state makes the most sense for us to go in based on the appetite, based on the costs associated with it. So for a state like Alabama, if we have a ton of players in there, then it makes sense to go to Alabama next. And we have our free to play token contest, which you referenced earlier, and that gives us a really good indication of where players are at and which states we should go into next. So I don't want to say with certainty where we'll be going next, just because it's still up in the air, but that's kind of how we're thinking about it.
I think that's great. And I will say about the token contests, we haven't talked a ton about those. I think those are a ton of fun.
Mm-hmm.
There are 4 tokens, which are just an in-app system. You can cash them out, but it's at this ridiculous.
Yeah. So we're actually, real quick, we're going to be taking a look at our token contest and our whole free to play kind of setup. And I'd be curious to hear your feedback on it. Because we want to turn our tokens into more of like a reward system and not something that you're using to enter contests with. There's just it doesn't sit right with us. And we want to make sure that players are still able to engage in a fun free to play experience where they can still have some like skin in the game to an extent. But we're going to be taking a look at like our whole sort of free to play model in our tokens. So just wanted to kind of preface it with that context. There's no like timeline for it necessarily, but hopefully coming sooner rather than later. But yeah, we have those token free to play contests, and it's fun. It's just like, sorry, go ahead.
Play is great for those sports that you don't maybe know a lot about. You can kind of get your feet wet with it. 100%. And what I've been doing lately is I just one spin, lock it in. Like I don't even try. Like let me just luck of the draw. What I get to one spin, I lock it in. Like it could be because if it's a sport like college football, I don't know that much. I'm banking on the rankings that you guys have, like the projections. I don't know. Like I know the couple of top quarterbacks, maybe a couple running backs, wide receivers, but I don't know who the best tight end is or the matchups or all that kind of stuff. So I'm like, let me just. It's free. I got a bunch of coins. One spin, lock it in, roll with it, fun with it. Just the pure luck of it because it doesn't cost me anything, and the tokens are fun and they're great. And you still get the leaderboard points if you win those contests. You don't get as much for winning those as a cash contest, but it's just a fun way to get into those free to play. So like when cricket rolls around, I'll be throwing my coins into cricket, right? Like that's just a way to get in there. And maybe I learn a little bit and go from there.
I love it.
So that's what's fun about it. So that's been Fantasy Spin. Anything else you want to add before we get out of here, Will?
About what?
About anything about Fantasy Spin that you want the listeners to know or think about or hear from you directly about Fantasy Spin, in terms of why they should join, what you think is important, what you think is fun.
Yeah, I think if I would leave like one sort of parting message, it would be to just check it out and let me know what you think. Like send me in, please, you'd be doing me a tremendous favor if you downloaded the app and you gave me your honest assessment of it. And it doesn't have to be some long, well thought out like monologue. It can just be this sucked or this was a lot of fun. I saw a good thread of tweets from Adam Harstead today about feedback, and I think it's really important to like advocate for getting feedback because it's hard. It's like people don't necessarily want to go out of their way to like tell you if something sucked, but like that's really important for us to hear. Like if something's not working or you think something isn't fun or if something's not fair, please tell me about it. So that would be sort of my final parting message. Download the app and please let me know what you think.
Yeah, and I read this like what I was saying when you were upstairs looking for the adapters, that you guys are really open and want that feedback, and you're really in community with the users of like, hey, what works, what doesn't work, like let us know. And right there's a time I just text you and like, hey, this sucks.
yeah and like it's like a little bit of like darn it, like we messed that one up, but it's great to hear it, you know what I mean? It's invaluable. And so like again, if I could just impart one message, one plea to the viewer, please check it out and let me know what you think.
Yeah, for real. I mean, check it out. I think it's like I said, I check it daily. You guys have a daily trivia question, which I check at 3 a.m. when I go to the bathroom because I'm old. I get up there and I do my daily trivia question because it resets every 14 hours or whatever it is. And
Well, you have a
it's
dog
really
to
fun.
take care of, right? Isn't that
Yeah, and the dog, gets up with me because he's like, "Oh, you're up, let me out too."
yeah. Come
So
on,
it's, it's
Dad,
a quick,
time to go.
yeah, it's a quick, it's a either or, it's a 50-50 chance random, question, and
Yeah.
I get most of them right, but there's some that I've seen multiple times and I keep getting wrong because I just can't remember the answer. Like when they added dugouts in Fenway Park, I can never remember which answer it is.
Yep.
Always, but it's just a fun thing that I have found that fantasy spin has become part of my daily routine of just I get up at night, do that. I get to work. I check my daily, my lineups for my fantasy game, and I go, let me see what's going on in fantasy spin. Okay, there's a lineup. Here's something I can play. And I do think there is this great sense of community. So, right when I set a good lineup, I put in that group chat we have of like, man, you guys are playing for second. Like,
Yeah.
suck it, Colby, suck it, Rachel. You guys are going down, right?
That's
And
what
it's
it's
just
all
been fun.
about. It
And it
sounds
was great,
silly,
like,
but it's
getting
what
to
it's
meet
all about.
Rachel at the expo and meeting you last year and seeing Colby this year at the expo and talking about it and, you know, going through and going, hey, let's do baseball. Like, I don't ever do baseball. Let's do a baseball contest. Whatever it is. And I think that's fun. And you're right, it is an avenue to build community, but it's also an avenue to other sports, which I think is super important nowadays because I think people get stuck in like, I only watch this sport. And there's so many other fun sports out there.
Yeah.
And I do think you guys created a great way of like lowering that barrier of entry to get involved, at least a base knowledge of some other sports. So really fun app. I think you guys are really innovating the space. I think the spinning aspect of it is very different because it takes some of the skill out of it where you're not like, oh, which the differentiator in the matchups. It's
You're not
I need to know.
playing against an algorithm or somebody
Yeah.
with like 10 spreadsheets and a bunch of like week 17 correlated matchups. That's
Yes.
just not what we're gonna be, and
No,
so
and I like
like
it because it's not like one person can enter 100 lineups. It's like I can only enter 3,
right.
right? And I only have a certain number of spins to get there. It's not like I'm going, well, this guy, with those DFS lineups, it's like, well, this guy's cheap, so everyone's going to have him because he's the cheap, viable option. That balance between, production and value when you're talking about building a lineup, it's like, hey, this guy's here, I have available. So there's times where I've locked in, like a Tony Pollard who's, to a 25th ranked running back and a Najee Harris because I'm like, hey, I like their matchups. I'm going to get them in there. But I'm not going, well, these are differentiators because you just never know who else is going to come up. You may get Lamar Jackson in all your spins, and someone else may never see Lamar Jackson,
Yep.
which I think is super fun. I think that's the innovative thing for me is that, yes, the player pool is the same for everyone, but the actual player pool is not the same for everyone, which I think is
It's
the real
totally different.
innovative thing.
Yeah,
It's totally different.
it leads to more strategy in my opinion.
It does.
I think that's one of the fun things is like trying to figure out a new game. It's like
Yeah.
personally I'm kind of into board games, and so I like the process of figuring out, okay, what's the strategy here. And
Yes.
if you're into that too, I would definitely recommend checking it out.
Oh yeah, and I think it's fun because it's luck of who you get in the spin, but then the strategy of who you lock in. I think that's
Yeah.
where and how valuable is someone because I've done some videos with Colby is like, man, I like this guy if we only had 3 spins left, but not with 7 spins left. I feel like the percentage we're gonna get someone better, and you're like I like Brock Purdy, but not with 7 spins left. But if we had 4 spins, I'd probably lock him in. So there's that strategy, and I think it's a good balance. And as I said before, it's a good balance right now of luck and skill. And I think it's starts out with a little bit of luck and then goes to skill. Where I think some of the other DFS contests are like a pick'em is all skill at some point. It's looking at data and going, well, this guy, and you can do those kind of spreadsheets and you can pay for people's opinions. I think this is very different where it's like, who do I get in the spin and who do I want to lock in based on how many spins I have left, how many locks I have left, and then you go from there. And you're right, you can have completely different lineups on a Sunday where there's, if there's 15, 16 quarterbacks available, you just might never see the top 2. And
Yeah.
someone else just might, but they might not see the top 2 wide receivers. It's very different. And then those single games, I played a game last night and I think I had Dawson Knox just because that final spin, I was like, let me see what I get. And I got Dawson Knox and he scored a touchdown and he did pretty well. So you just never know who you might just randomly luck into.
Yeah.
So I think it's
really quick, Dustin. I think that was a really good point you made about the pick'ems and how this game kind of compares to them in terms of skill. And you're totally right. Like you can just go online and find some, person who's touting picks and pay for a service and just copy picks. And there's no skill involved in that. Like you're just copying someone's lineup. With Fantasy Spin, you are on your own. You know what I mean? Like you're in charge of having takes on each player. Like it's totally on you. So I think that's a really fun way to look at it. And like, thank you for kind of like bringing that up because ultimately it comes down to you, and that's what I really like about it.
And I like that it is a competition too, because those, when
Mhm.
you're doing a pick'em, it's you versus the house. Like it's either I win or lose. It's me versus you versus Colby versus Rachel versus,
Yeah, it's all
you
about
know,
community.
it's all about community, but it's not a, it's not does Derrick Henry get over 78 yards? It's does
Right.
Derrick Henry do well enough and give me enough points with the rest of my lineup? So it is kind of, I think it bridges that gap between the DFS and like pick'ems and fantasy lineups. Where like you're still submitting a lineup and you, like I said, I've had really good lineups that I think are going to win and they just stink, and then I don't win it. But it's like, if a DFS pick, I'm like, well, do I think Josh Allen's going to pass for over 200 yards? Yes, and I would win no matter what. This is, you can still have good lineups and lose, which I think adds a little bit of element of fun, because winning is fun and winning money is fun, but losing makes the winning even more fun, I find. So like me on
Yeah.
a losing streak right now, it sucks, but when I win, I'm like, yes, I finally won some money and I'm up.
You're gonna
Even though I'm
break through. The other side is right around the corner, because I've seen you on the other side plenty of times. I have no doubt you'll be back there in no
that
time.
is true. I keep
One
trying to tell myself like I'm playing with house money, so it's all good.
Oh, you're playing with house money for a while. I hope. So
I have been playing with house money for a long time.
one quick thing too, because it sounds like we're kind of wrapping up, but I wanted to
Yeah.
like just kind of put myself out there as like a resource if anybody is kind of thinking about starting anything, whether it's an app, whether it's a website, whether it's related to fantasy sports, whether it's not. Please reach out to me, because I've made a lot of mistakes and there's a lot of things that I've learned not to do, and I'd be kind of happy to point people in some direction if they're looking for direction from somebody who's made those mistakes before. So,
Oh yeah, definitely. I will definitely second that. Like I've reached out to Will, like when I was making this podcast, I was like, hey, what do you think of this logo? You're like, I wish it was a different color, or it's not good enough, or it's not big enough. And I think you're right. Like I think there's a reason you being on the FSGA, which for those who don't know is the Fantasy Sports Gaming Association. It's the biggest, association. Yeah, that basically
save the date. 2 conferences a year.
2 conferences a year.
Yep. Summer one's in Chicago, June 30th through July 1st.
Ooh, this summer?
Yep. Chicago,
Ooh,
Chi-Town, baby.
they picked Chicago. That's good.
Yeah, yeah. You could drive to it.
I might have to make it down for that one. I was told it might be Nashville, so I'm happy it's Chicago.
Yeah, Chicago, and then in the winter we'll be at the Circa February 18th and 19th. I was there, what was it, 3 days ago.
Yeah.
Met with the folks there that are going to be helping us put it on, and just an awesome place. So if you can make it in February, awesome. If you can make it in Chicago, awesome. But if not, no worries. Reach out to anybody that's part of the FSGA. And
yeah, the FSGA is a great resource for anybody in the fantasy community that wants to develop a website, a business, wants to just make connections. I think you are on the forefront of that in terms of being available and being a resource. Like you just came on and said, hey, reach out to me if you have any kind of questions. And I think you're always open and honest. And I know like Digger, who works for you guys, and the FSGA, which is actually based here in Wisconsin, down the road from me.
Madison.
You're just a great resource. Yeah, they're a great resource for people just to help you not do this alone, because there's a lot of things you don't know that you don't know. And there's things you're like, I know I don't know this and I need some help. So whether that's legal, whether that's regulatory, whether that's just UX or building an app or anything, that USGA's or FSGA is there to help. And I think, well, you're really great about being available for that. So if you guys have any questions on, hey, how do I build an app, or how do I, legally, how do I do X, or I want to do this? And I think, Will, you're great about like talking that through with people and going, this is what has worked. This is what hasn't worked. This is what I would do. This is, here's some people. I reached out to you about a year ago and you're like, I'll do you one better. Here, let me introduce you to this guy. And you introduced me to Ed Williams. And it was like, you didn't have to do that. I just asked you for like some feedback on my resume. You're like, I'll do you feedback and I'll introduce. Like, you're just really great about doing that. So if you guys are listening and you have questions about anything, whether that's business, whether that's life, whether that's, gambling, whether that's app, whether that's fantasy related, reach out to Will. I think he's a great resource that's underutilized in this space. And I think FSGA really got a good one having you on the board, because I do think you're also in a space of looking out for the small guys, looking out for new people, and taking FSGA to the next level as things continue to evolve. So love Fantasy Spin.
Can you repeat all that? My headphones cut out, Dustin. Sorry, just kidding. That was so nice, dude. Thank you so much for saying all that. But yeah, really mean it. Like, if you're a founder, if you're just starting out, like, you can feel like you're on an island a lot of times. And if you feel like that and you're struggling with any part of it, just reach out.
No, there's a reason why when I made this podcast, I said Joe and Steve need to be on the first one. And when I came up with Innovators, I was like, Will, you're on the first one.
Tip of the cap, brother.
Like, no questions asked. I think Fantasy Spin's a great app. I think you guys really built something fun, exciting, and different. You guys are really innovating And that's what this show is about. It's about finding people who are innovating in the space, taking what we love and adding a new fun wrinkle to it. So appreciate you coming on. Anything else you want to add before we get out of here?
Go Bonnies. St.
Go Bonnies.
Bonaventure. If you're looking for a college, great one to go to.
Where's that located?
Olean, New York, the cradle of America, Western New York, about an hour south of Buffalo. Yep. One of the most barren places you could ever imagine. And somehow there's a D1 college there with a raucous basketball team, an awesome fan base, a stellar Franciscan education for great value. Check it out, St. Bonaventure University.
Before we go, who's going to win the World Series this year?
Oh, the Mets.
Mets?
OMG.
Okay, Mets it is. There you go.
My future says so. I really hope so. I have some decent. It's so absurd. I have some decent futures on the Mets for no good reason. I'm hanging on by a thread with them. I hope they pull off.
Okay, they only got to win a few more games, right?
Yep.
So, well, thanks everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you guys tuning in for the first Fantasy Innovators. We'll be doing this every couple weeks with some new apps and people in the space. We'll be back to our regular Bridge the Gap concepts next year, talking about stuff. Next week, we have Ronnie Evans talking about AI and how the future of that looks like and how it's going to pertain to the fantasy space. Hit that like and subscribe, download Fantasy Spin, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks for tuning in to Bridge the Gap.